Today I'm honored to welcome Chancellor Angela Merkel back to the White House. Over the past year, I have enjoyed getting to know the Chancellor very well through many productive calls, discussions, and meetings. We have a great relationship. Chancellor, I want to congratulate you once again on your election victory, fourth term in office. It's really something. Congratulations. We're also pleased to have our newly confirmed United States Ambassador to Germany, Richard Grinnell, outstanding man, and he's with us today. And Richard, congratulations. Do a great job, and I know you will. Thank you. This confirmation was long overdue. We've been waiting a long time for Richard to get his clearance, and he got it. And it's going to be special, but we have a lot of people that are waiting approval, and the Democrats have been treating us extremely unfairly, and they're going to have to move it along. For decades, the alliance and friendship between Germany and the United States has advanced the cause of peace, prosperity, and freedom. Today, our nations face a wide array of shared challenges and opportunities, and I am confident that we will meet them together with the same strength and resolve that has always defined the United States-German friendship. This afternoon, I want to congratulate the Republic of Korea on its historic summit with North Korea. We're encouraged by President Moon and Kim Jong-un's expressed goal of complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. I will be meeting with Kim Jong-un in the coming weeks. We look forward to that, and hopefully it will be productive. I want to thank Chancellor Merkel for her leadership in our campaign of maximum pressure on the North Korean regime, which has helped us to reach this important step, this moment where we are right now. It's taken a long time, many, many decades to get here. Let's see what happens. We seek a future of peace, prosperity, and harmony for the whole Korean Peninsula, unlocking not only a brighter future for the people of Korea, but for the people of the world. However, in pursuit of that goal, we will not repeat the mistake of past administrations. Maximum pressure will continue until denuclearization occurs. I look forward to our meeting. It should be quite something. In our meetings today, the Chancellor and I discussed Iran. The Iranian regime fuels violence, bloodshed, and chaos all across the Middle East. We must ensure that this murderous regime does not even get close to a nuclear weapon, and that Iran ends its proliferation of dangerous missiles and its support for terrorism. No matter where you go in the Middle East, wherever there's a problem, Iran is right there. As we eradicate what little remains of ISIS in Syria, we must also ensure that Iran does not profit from our success. To prevent this outcome, it is essential that our coalition and regional partners step up their financial and military contributions to the anti-ISIS efforts. Some of these countries are immensely wealthy, and they're going to start paying for it and paying for this tremendous help that we've given them. The Chancellor and I also had a productive discussion about the security of Europe and the responsibility of European nations to properly contribute to their own defense. We addressed the need to strengthen NATO and the NATO alliance by ensuring that all member states honor their commitment to spend 2% and hopefully much more of GDP on defense. It is essential that our NATO allies increase their financial contributions so that everyone is paying their fair share. We look forward to seeing further progress towards improved burden sharing. A lot of people have stepped up, a lot of countries have stepped up, and they're going to have to continue to do so. Tremendous amount of additional money has been raised for NATO over the past 16 months, and I'm proud to have helped, but they have to keep going. In this age of international crime, smuggling, terrorism, and trafficking, It is also essential that we have strong border security and immigration control. This is fundamental to national defense. Also vital to our security and that of our allies is America's ability to maintain a strong and robust manufacturing base, which we really are doing in the United States. We have additional steel plants opening. Steel plants are expanding. Aluminum is doing great. A lot of things are happening that were never going to happen before. That's why we must have a fair and reciprocal trading relationship with our friends and partners. We have a trade deficit in goods with the European Union of approximately, hard to believe, $151 billion a year, including a $50 billion annual trade deficit in autos and auto parts. I'm committed to working with Chancellor Merkel to reduce barriers for United States exports, to remedy these trade imbalances, and deepen our economic ties. We also welcome the Chancellor's partnership in promoting major reforms to international organizations like the World Trade Organization, which has not treated the United States well to protect sovereignty and ensure fairness. The close cooperation across multiple fronts, military, intelligence, economic, academic, is critical to the defense of our civilization as we know it. And the close friendship between the German and American people enriches the lives of millions and millions of our citizens. Chancellor, thank you again for visiting the White House. It's an honor to have you. Our alliance is strong and thriving, and together we will overcome shared obstacles, seize upon shared opportunities, and build an incredible future for our country and our people. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chancellor. Thank you very much.
Ja, danke schön. Ich möchte mich vor allen Dingen für den Empfang hier heute bedanken im Weißen Haus und mit der Gelegenheit
reception here in the White House and for giving us this opportunity to have an exchange of views. This is my first visit after the re-election to a country outside of Europe, and I thought it was very important to underline that for Germany the transatlantic ties are of prime importance. We are very much aware of the fact that these transatlantic ties are for us of crucial, of indeed existential importance. These transatlantic ties have given a great contribution to our reunification. The first part of my life I spent on the other side of the Iron Curtain, and the fact that it was possible for our country to reunite is essentially due to the United States and their contribution, and this will be most important also for our future cooperation that is more urgently needed than ever in view of the turbulences all over the world. So Germany will continue to be a reliable partner in NATO, in our alliance, is a reliable partner within the European Union, all the more so since today we fight against nuclearization of Iran, against terrorism, against ISIS in Iraq, in Syria, against terrorism in Afghanistan or in Africa, and we depend urgently on each other. Today we meet at a point in time where it has become very clear that the strength of the American president, where he really saw to it that the sanctions against North Korea are abided by, are respected, has opened new possibilities, opened new ways. This first meeting between Kim Jong-un and the South Korean President Moon is a first step on a road that will hopefully lead into a better future. We Germans know only too well what it means after years of separation, after years of division, to have these first contacts, but we will continue to be vigilant to see to it that denuclearization is stopped of North Korea and that a nuclear-free zone is established on the Korean peninsula. We think that this is essential. We will have to see also in our fight against the Iranian attempts to become nuclear will go on. We are of the opinion that the JCPOA is a first step that has contributed to slowing down their activities in this particular respect, to also establish a better verification and monitoring process. But we also think, from a German perspective, that this is not sufficient in order to see to it that Iran's ambitions are curbed and are contained. It is most important to see that Iran, after all, is trying to exert a geopolitical influence in Syria, in Lebanon, and in Iraq, and we have to see to it that this attempt at influence is curbed, is contained, and that beyond JCPOA, reliability can be established. And I think that Europe and the United States of America ought to be in lockstep on this, or to work together very closely, also to end the terrible bloodshed in Syria and to bring about a solution for the region as a whole. Beyond that and over and above that, we also addressed the tasks that we see ahead on defense. Germany in 2019 is going to earmark a share of 1.3 of its GDP on defense. That has been an increase over the past few years. We haven't yet met the target where we should be, but we are getting closer to the target, to the guideline that we've set for ourselves in Wales. On trade, I think it's most important to see that very close relations on trade exist between Germany and the European Union on the one hand and the United States on the other. We want fair trade. We want a trade that is in line with the multilateral trading system of WTO, but we also acknowledge that for many, many years WTO has not been able to bring about international agreements, so bilateral agreements may well replace that. That's something that we, on behalf of the European Union, already have done and have negotiated with a number of countries over the past few years, so I can well envisage such negotiations with the United States as well. But obviously, that has to be reconciled, and I would also like to point out that Germany, on the one hand, has very close trade relations with you. The President obviously is not satisfied with the trade surplus. We have already been able to reduce that, our trade surplus that is with the United States, but we still have a long way to go. But the United States, also due to the tax reform, again has become a very interesting place to invest for our companies, and we can say with great pride that not only hundreds of thousands of cars are exported from Germany to the United States, but that from the US to the rest of the world, hundreds of thousands of cars that are built here in the States are exported to the rest of the world, with creating American jobs, and I believe that the workers here have very good working conditions. So that again is another bond that ties our two countries together. We will continue to discuss those trade issues. We will have the NATO meeting in the summer. We will meet again there. And let me say in conclusion that apart from the political relations that are very close, and well, we sometimes may look at issues differently, but generally around on the basis of friendship, on partnership, we are linked by ties in the world of science, in the world of culture. We still host the largest number of troops. Ever since 1945, about 17 million members of the U.S. military were stationed in Germany, and a lot of them have established very close ties, very close friendships with Germans, and I'm delighted to see that now the ambassador can very soon, when he's in Germany, work on this basis, and we're delighted that we finally have an ambassador. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Angela. Thank you very much. All right, we'll take some questions. Blake Berman, yes. Blake?
Thank you, Mr. President. Chancellor Merkel, I'll ask a couple questions of the President first. I want to ask you, I'm going to step over, it's crowded in here. I want to ask you about a couple comments that you made in the Oval Office earlier, in which you said about North Korea that they've played the U.S. in the past like a fiddle, but that's not going to happen to us. Do you, as it relates to hopefully getting peace on the Korean Peninsula, denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, do you feel as if you need to be the closer in that deal? Do you want to be the closer in that deal, or do you think that's something that is shared by all of the major stakeholders, all of the world leaders within that region? And secondly, indulge us if you might, You said that the relationship with North Korea has been strong, or one of the words you used. Have you spoken with Kim Jong-un himself, or do you plan on speaking with him?
I don't want to comment on that.
Do you plan on speaking with him before?
We have a very good working relationship. We're setting up a meeting. Things have changed very radically from a few months ago. You know, the name calling and a lot of other things. We get a kick every once in a while out of the fact that I'll be watching people that failed so badly over the last 25 years explaining to me how to make a deal with North Korea. I get a big, big kick out of that. But we are doing very well. I think that something very dramatic could happen. They're treating us with great respect. And you know what's going on with South Korea. And I think President Moon of South Korea was very generous in saying that we helped make the Olympics a great success because of the fact that, as you know, there was a tremendous animosity, there was a tremendous problem going on, and all of a sudden people started buying tickets because whole different feeling when North said, we'd love to go to the Olympics. So a lot of good things are happening with respect to North Korea. President Obama told me when I had the one meeting with him, he said, that's your biggest problem. That's going to be the most difficult thing you have. And honestly, I wish it was handled earlier. I wish it were handled by another administration years ago. I'm not just talking about President Obama. I go back to any administration you want. But over the last 25 years, this should have been handled a long time ago, not now. This should not have been left for me to handle. But we will handle it. We're handling it well, and hopefully there'll be peace for North Korea, South Korea, Germany. I mean, everything is included. Japan, the Chancellor has been very helpful in the maximum pressure campaign, as I said, really very helpful. So have many other nations. President Xi of China has been really good at the border. Everyone's surprised at how tight he clamped down. Everyone said that he'd just talk about it, he wouldn't do it. Well, he did it. And he did it out of a relationship that we have, and also out of the fact that we're negotiating trade deals, and I think that's also very important to him. Hopefully we'll come up with something that's good for both countries. So I think some very good things can happen with respect to North Korea. We're setting up meetings now. We're down to 2 countries as to a site, and we'll let you know what that side is. Do you have a question for the Chancellor?
Just to follow up real quickly, do you feel like it's your responsibility for this to eventually get settled between North and South Korea?
I think I have a responsibility. I think other presidents should have done it. I think the responsibility has fallen on the shoulders of the President of the United States. And I think I have a responsibility to see if I can do it. And if I can't do it, it'll be a very tough time for a lot of countries and a lot of people. It's certainly something that I hope I can do for the world. This is beyond the United States. This is a world problem, and it's something that I hope I'm able to do for the world. Okay? Please.
Thank you. And Chancellor Merkel.
Was? Ach so.
Sorry.
Sorry.
No worries. Thank you very much. I'm just wondering if you've been given any assurances that the European Union will be exempt from steel and aluminum tariffs come Tuesday, the May 1st deadline. Did President Trump tell you what he may or may not do? Thank you.
That question.
Der Präsident wird entscheiden.
The President will
Das ist
decide.
klar. Wir haben
That
uns
is very clear.
ausgetauscht
We
über
had an
den
exchange of
Stand
views
der
on the current state of affairs of the negotiations and the respective assessments on where we stand on this. And the decision lies with the President.
Herr Ross.
Okay?
Mr. Ross, please.
Thank you. I have a question for the Chancellor, but I'd like to start with a question on Iran for you, Mr. President. After a long day of talks with you, President Macron went to Congress, warned of a new war in the Middle East, and asked the world and the United States to respect the sovereignty of all countries, including Iran. In the absence of a new agreement, are you prepared to use military force to rein in the nuclear program in Iran, or do you have another plan B that is not an agreement and not military force?
I don't talk about whether or not I'd use military force. It's not appropriate to be talking about. But I can tell you this. They will not be doing nuclear weapons. That I can tell you. Okay? They're not going to be doing nuclear weapons. You can bank on it. Okay, please.
Frau Bundeskanzlerin, noch vor einem Jahr war
Madam
die große
Chancellor,
Sorge
only a
in
year
Berlin,
ago,
dass
people in
Präsident
Berlin
Trump
were very
nicht
much
bereit
concerned
sein
about President
könnte,
Trump not
Russland gegenüber Härte
being
zu
ready
zeigen.
to show
Jetzt sind Sie nach
toughness
Washington gekommen, unter anderem
against
mit der
Russia. Now
Sorge,
you've come to
dass eine neue
Washington
Runde von
with the
Sanktionen gegen die
concern that a
sogenannten
new
Oligarchen
round
die
of
deutsche
sanctions
Wirtschaft
against the
schädigt.
so-called
Haben Sie
oligarchs
den
may well
Präsidenten an dieser
be
Stelle
detrimental to the
Ausnahmeregelungen
German
für deutsche Firmen
economy. Have you
gebeten?
asked the
Und sind
President
Sie
to
insgesamt in der
exempt
Sorge,
German companies
dass
from these
Amerika
sanctions?
in
And
dem
are you
Bestreben des
generally
Präsidenten
worried that
jetzt
the
der härteste
United
zu
States,
sein im
because
Umgang
the
mit Präsident
President is
Putin
trying to be
ins andere
toughest
Extrem
with
umschlägt
President
und zu
Putin,
hart
may
gegen
well
Russland vorgeht?
change completely and may well be treating
Also
Russia
erstens
too
haben wir uns
harshly
über die
without
Ukraine
coordinating
natürlich
with you.
unterhalten
Well,
und hier arbeiten wir auch
we
sehr eng
discussed
zusammen
Ukraine, and here we
gegen
work
die
together very
illegitimen
closely
Aktionen
against the
Russlands,
illegitimate
sehr
actions of
schlimm, aber
Russia
vor allen Dingen
due
auch
to, for example,
durch
annexation of
die Situation
Crimea
in
and also
Ostukraine.
the situation they
Und wir
caused
freuen uns
in
sehr, dass
eastern
Volker
Ukraine.
und
I'm
die amerikanische
very
Administration
pleased
hier
to
sehr eng zusammenarbeiten,
say that we work
ergänzend
very
zu den
closely
Hilfsvorhaben, das wir
with
in
the
der
American
Ukraine
administration in
Zweitens sind die
complementing the
Sanktionen ja
Minsk
sehr stark
format.
auch im Kongress
And the
entstanden.
sanctions very
Und wir
much
arbeiten hier mit den
are a thing of the
Vertretern
Congress,
der
and we work together
Administration
with the
zusammen, zum Beispiel sehr eng mit
representative
dem
of the
Finanzminister,
administration here
uns darüber
also, and
auszutauschen,
very
was für Sekundärwirkungen das
closely with the
haben kann.
Treasury.
Und ich
We
glaube, im
exchange
Blick
views
auf
on
die
what sort of
Auseinandersetzung, auf die
secondary
Konflikte mit
effects
Russland,
that
auch
may
die Rolle
have,
von
and
Russland
looking at the
Syrien,
conflicts we
gibt es ein
have
hohes
with
Maß
Russia,
an
for example,
Übereinstimmung,
in
ein hohes Maß an
Syria.
Austausch.
There is
Kein
a
Mensch ist
wide
daran
degree of
interessiert, keine
agreement,
Beziehung zu Russland zu
and
haben,
no
aber wo
one is
Konflikte
interested in
auftreten
not
und
having
wo
good
Dinge
relations
passieren,
with
wie zum
Russia. But
Beispiel in der
wherever there are
Ukraine,
conflicts,
müssen sie beim
wherever
Namen
there are certain
genannt
things
werden.
happening,
Und
as for
das
example in
Prinzip der
Ukraine, we have to call a
territorialen
spade
Integrität
and the
eines Landes wie der
principle of
Ukraine
territorial
ist,
integrity of a country such as
ausgesprochen
Ukraine
wichtig. Das muss
is
unbedingt
one that needs to be upheld and that needs to be
Aber Frau Bundeskanzlerin, fanden Sie den
enforced.
Austausch in dieser Frage
But,
in
Madam
letzter
Chancellor,
Zeit
the
befriedigend?
exchange, was it satisfactory
Zwischen
on these
Amerika und
issues
Europa?
between
Die Abstimmung so
America
eng, wie Sie sich
and
die wünschen?
Europe?
Ja.
Is it as closely
Wann immer
aligned
ich
as you
Fragen
want?
habe, kann
Yes.
ich fragen.
Whenever I
Und,
have
ich
questions, I
glaube,
can ask those
dass der
questions, and
Austausch,
I believe that
da ist. Ich sage
the
nochmal, die
exchange is
Sanktionen
there.
sind im Kongress
Again,
verabschiedet
sanctions have been
worden. Wir
adopted
haben
by
jetzt darauf
Congress.
hingewiesen, was das zum
We
Teil für
pointed out
Auswirkungen
to
für uns
what
hat. Die
sort of
Finanzminister haben
effects
da,
that
glaube ich, gestern
has.
noch
I
mal,
believe that
drüber
our finance
gesprochen,
minister
als sie
and
sich
the
in Paris bei der
Treasury have talked about this
Terrorismus-Finanzkonferenz
yesterday when they met
getroffen
at the
haben. Und wenn es
with
weitere
other
Probleme
finance
gibt, kann ich auch
ministers at the
jederzeit mit
financing
Präsident
for Syria conference yesterday. And whenever I have problems, I can talk to our American
Ben
counterparts.
Kennedy, please, CBN.
Mr. President, two questions for you. The first one's on Ronnie Jackson. It's been 1 day since he bowed out. I know it's only been less than 24 hours. Have you have a new nominee for the Secretary for the Department of Veteran Affairs? And my second question is on the U.S. Embassy set to open in Jerusalem in 3 weeks. Have you decided if you do plan to attend? And also, can you confirm if Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin is leading a delegation that could include your son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and Ivanka Trump?
Ronnie Jackson, Admiral Doctor, is one of the finest men that I've met over the last long period of time. High quality family. I just met them. And I explained what happened. I explained that Washington can be a very mean place. You don't know about that, Chancellor. A nasty place. The false accusations that were made about him by Senator Tester from a great state, I don't think that state is going to put up with it. These were false accusations about a great man, about a man who has a son who's a top student at Annapolis, about a man that's given his life to this country and to the military, a brave man. He would have been a great leader. To say the kind of things that he said, you had President Obama giving him an A-plus report. You had President Bush giving him an A-plus report. You have President Trump giving him an A-plus report. And to make statements of things that most people said never happened, never even happened, calling them names was, to me, a disgrace, an absolute disgrace. And I think it's something we learn from. I called him today. I said, in a certain way, you're in a very big way, you're an American hero because you've exposed the system for some horrible things. I've had it happen to me with the Russian collusion hoax. It's a hoax. But I came into the job understanding that things happen. He didn't. He's a great doctor. He's a great admiral. He didn't really think a thing like this could happen. And I think it's a disgrace. So I just want to comment on that. And actually, I'm glad you asked the question. I think this man has been treated, he's an American hero, and I think he's been treated very unfairly. Okay?
As far as a nomination, have you put forward a new nomination yet?
I have many people that want the position, if you can believe it. With all of this being said, we have some excellent people, some very political people, some people that a thing like that wouldn't happen, or if it did happen, I guess they'll handle it somewhat differently. But we have many people that want that job. We're very proud of the job we've done for the veterans. The veterans have been, we've gotten accountability approved, which is something that for years they've been trying to get. As you know, they couldn't get it approved. We got accountability. So that when somebody treats our veterans badly, we can fire them so fast, almost as fast as they fire people in Germany. We'll get rid of them. And I will tell you, we're getting choice. We're putting choice in very, very strongly. We have tremendous support in the Senate for that. But I have a lot of people that want the job. We're doing a great job over there for the vets. And, you know, that was one of the things that to me was the most important. We had tremendous support from the vets. We're getting great reports. But getting a thing such as accountability done, we'll be soon getting choice done. Meaning, if a veteran stands online and can't get to a doctor for various reasons, they're going to a private doctor and this country is going to pay. They're not going to wait 9 weeks online for a cure to something that could have been very easy to cure, and then they end up dying from it. So we're going to, I'm very proud of what we've done, and I will tell you, your new head of the VA is going to be very exceptional. We have some exceptional people that want to do the job. Okay.
Before I get to Chancellor Merkel, I wanted to backtrack to the U.S. Embassy opening up in Jerusalem. You said in the past that you would like to go.
So they came to me. This is a little bit about government. Somebody said, could I tell this story? And they came to me with a proposal for a $1 billion embassy in Jerusalem. And the papers, Mike Pence can tell you, the papers were put before me to sign an application for more than $1 billion to build an embassy. I said, what are you talking about? $1 billion. You know, most embassies are like a single story. And they said, yes, sir, it's $1 billion. And I had my name half signed. Then I noticed the figure, and I never got to the word Trump. I had Donald signed, but I never got to the word Trump. And I called my ambassador, who's a great lawyer. Most people in business know David Friedman. He's the ambassador to Israel and loves Israel, loves our country, loves Israel too. And I said, what's this $1 billion? He said, I can build it for $150,000. I said, what? He said, I can build it for $150,000, the embassy. We have a building, we have the site, we already own the site, we own the building. I can take a corner of the building, and for $150,000, we can fix it up, make it beautiful, open our embassy. Instead of in 10 years from now, we can open it up in 3 months. And that's what we did. But I said, David, let's not go from $1 billion to $150,000. Let's go to $300,000-$400,000. And that's what we did. We would take a piece of the building. It's going to be beautiful. And it'll be somewhat temporary, but it could be for many years, because by the time they build it the other way, it's going to be many, many years. They were looking for sites. We already have a site. And we have a great site. The site's better than anything you could imagine. But that's the way government works. They were going to spend $1 billion, and we're going to spend much less than $500,000. Could have done it for much less than that, but I said, let's make it really nice. So that's what it is. I may go, very proud of it. Jerusalem has been a subject that's been promised for many years, as you know, the embassy in Jerusalem. It's been promised for many, many years by presidents. They all made campaign promises, and they never had the courage to carry it out. I carried it out. So I may go. It's getting ready to open. And I do want to tell that story, though, because there are a couple of people that got to see it, including Mike, but others, where literally they were going to spend $1 billion, and we're spending a tiny, tiny fraction of that in the hundreds of thousands of dollars instead. And it will be very nice. Maybe it'll be nicer than $1 billion building. Okay? For the Chancellor, please.
Well, Chancellor, I wanted to ask about the Iran nuclear deal. You just heard President Trump say that Iran will not be restarting the nuclear program. You can bank on it. Do you fear that if the U.S. backs out, that Iran will restart their nuclear program? And also, you're the second European Union leader or European leader to stop here at the White House this week. What improvements did you recommend to the president that needs to be changed in order to keep the U.S. in the deal?
Gut, ich habe meine Position.
Well, I set out my position, and that is that I believe that obviously this agreement is anything but perfect. It will not solve all the problems with Iran. It is one piece of the mosaic, one building block, if you like, on which we can build up this structure. And that when the United Kingdom, France and Germany worked together with the American colleagues, this was brought about, and we will now see what sort of decisions are made by our American partners. I said that the whole of the region obviously is of prime importance to us because it's not 1,000 kilometers away, as it is the case, for example, between the USA and Syria. But Syria and Iran are countries that are right on our doorstep. So that is of prime importance for us, and we will continue to be in very close talks on this.
Frau Dunz.
Mrs. Dunz, please.
Christina
Dunz from Rheinische Post. Madam Chancellor, you used to describe America as a destination of your sort of what you ever wanted to be. And now it's said in Germany by you that Europe actually has to take its destiny in its own hands and that you cannot rely on the United States supporting you all the time. Have you talked with the President about this development, where this unhappy development that drifting apart, and should not you in many ways deliver also on this promise of significantly increasing the defense spending? And addressed to you, Mr. President, a lot of people are irritated by the way that you fulfill this most important job that exists in the rest of the world with certain aggressive Twitter messages and so on. I want to ask you whether, and certain threats that you make, does this mean that in the future there will be less compromise struck by the United States, less reconciliation? And how will you decide on the 1st of May when it is about a possible extension of the exemption for tariffs? What is your position on this, Mr. President? Will there be a trade war with this big bloc Europe, or do you see an opportunity of actually not going into such a trade war? Well, I think for a lot of people in Germany, but also in many other countries, people wish and love to go to the United States. We have just said there are more than 40 million people who have their roots in Germany, in Europe, here in the United States. Also for many people in Germany, in Europe, America is a great country, and even though we may see matters differently on certain political issues, we have to address that, we have to talk about this. But this land of freedom, this great country, obviously still remains very attractive, and so I continue to say that. And I said, yes, Germany and Europe have to take their destiny into their own hands, because we can no longer, as we used to during the period of the Cold War, during the years when Germany was divided, rely on America coming and helping us. America is still helping us, but step by step, we will simply have to increase our contribution to, and America has been very much engaged, very broadly engaged in parts of the world that are far away from America, and the people of America too have said, well, what's in it for us? So the President is saying you ought to have some more burden sharing. So in a way, we're maturing, we're growing out of a role where after the Second World War, people were rather happy for Germany not becoming too engaged, not too active, because during the period of National Socialism, we created such incredible injustice in the world. And but this post-war period is at an end. It's more than this post-war period well, that's essentially 70 years ago. So we as Germans have to learn to assume more responsibility. We're proud to be the second largest troop contributor in NATO. We've done a lot over the past few years, obviously from the President's perspective, not perhaps fast enough, but I would say, as German Chancellor, we have made important steps in the right direction, and we will continue to do so. We cannot rely, if conflicts are on our doorstep, for others to step in, and we ourselves don't have to give a contribution. And this contribution will have to increase over the next few years to come. That has something to do with military engagement, with defense spending, with combating and tackling root causes of flight, but also with the readiness to become more engaged in diplomacy. Germany, for example, for the first time, is part and parcel of the so-called small group. It has just had a meeting in Paris on Syria, together with the US, with the UAE, with Saudi Arabia, and we want to give our contribution to this as well. It's our obligation, it's our duty. I don't think that we ought to complain about this. We have to learn, as a big country, as an economically successful country, as the President says, you're economically successful, but militarily and politically you don't wish to do so much. We have to learn to assume our role, and there are differences of opinion. We as friends can discuss that openly.
Thank you, Chancellor. We need a reciprocal relationship, which we don't have. The United States right now has a trade deficit with the European Union of $151 billion. And the Chancellor and I have discussed it today at length, and we're working on it, and we want to make it more fair, and the Chancellor wants to make it more fair. Same thing with NATO. We have a far greater burden than we should have. Other countries should be paying more. And I'm not saying Germany alone. Other countries should be paying more. I mean, we're protecting Europe, and yet we pay by far more than anybody else. And NATO is wonderful, but it helps Europe more than it helps us. And why are we paying a vast majority of the costs? So we're working on those things. It's been unfair. And I don't blame the Chancellor, and I don't blame Germany. I don't even blame the European Union. I blame the people that preceded me for allowing this to happen. There's no way we should have a trade deficit of $151 billion. So we're going to make it reciprocal. We're going to make it a much more fair situation. And I think in the end, everybody's going to be very happy. I think both countries, I view this as many countries, but looking at it as one bloc, will really benefit. There's tremendous potential between the European Union and the United States, and I think that's going to happen. There's also tremendous benefit to NATO when people pay what they have to be paying. Some countries actually pay more than they're supposed to. They think the United States is, I've been told by numerous countries, Poland being one. Poland is great. I mean, they pay actually a little bit more than they're supposed to be paying or have to pay because they feel the United States is more than carrying the load. And perhaps they feel it's not fair, but it's something we very much appreciate. But I believe that, you know, when I look at the numbers in Germany and some other countries, they may not like Donald Trump, but you have to understand, that means I'm doing a good job because I'm representing the United States. Angela is representing Germany. She's doing a fantastic job. My predecessors did not do a very good job. But we'll try and catch you, okay? We'll try. We're going to have a reciprocal relationship, and it's going to be something that benefits all of us, okay? Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Angela. Thank you very much.
You've been watching ABC News Live. I'm Kenneth Moten here in New York. We are continuing our special coverage of President Trump's joint news conference with German Chancellor Angela Merkel. As you see, the two world leaders there walk away from the East Room. The president touching on a number of headlines there, from trade to North Korea, and so much more. So let's get right back to Washington, to ABC News political director Rick Klein, who's standing by right now. Rick, I think really one of the big headlines here, North Korea, the president not answering the question if he's actually spoken with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un.
He says he does not want to confirm whether he's had that direct conversation or not, although he says the communications generally have been very good. Interesting also, he shared details of a private conversation he had with President Obama, where Obama told him during their one meeting before President Trump took office that it was going to be the biggest issue of his presidency. President Trump blaming his predecessors for not solving it, but taking, I think, something of a victory lap in this breakthrough, and it is a breakthrough, a remarkable one that has happened on the Korean Peninsula. Pairing that also with tough words for Iran, and I think you get a sense of what the emerging Trump doctrine is here. He is lavishing praise on the North Koreans who are moving toward some kind of a peaceful arrangement, peaceful solution, and having a lot of tough talk for Iran as the deadline comes up for him to recertify the Iran nuclear agreement. So I think some very different messaging coming out of the president. Of course, all of that is a lot different from the days of fire and fury and locked and loaded and Little Rocket Man and my button is bigger than yours, which animated the relationship with North Korea just a few months ago.
Let's bring in ABC's senior White House correspondent, Cecilia Vega, who's there in the East Room. Cecilia, I've got to ask you, as far as when it comes to the president saying it's his responsibility to handle the North Korean situation, what was your take on that?
Well, I am really struck by that line entirely, Kenneth. The president said, and really for the first time, that he feels like he has to close this deal so that it benefits the world. And as we know, this is a president who likes to humble brag, if you will, and he sort of today seemed to be taking some credit for where things stand. And a lot of people would say, I think even his biggest critics, that he deserves some credit for what is happening, what we are seeing right now on the Korean Peninsula. He says he sort of seemed to be magnanimous in this one, saying that this is something he wants to do for the entire world. I gotta say, Kenneth, I'm also struck by some of the questions that came from the German press corps in here, not just about what's happening in North Korea, not just what's happening in Iran. This is a president who still faces questions about his behavior, his tone, and his tenor, and what they describe as an abrasive style on Twitter, and their relationship. And he said, look, this means I am doing a good job. If you others or countries are complaining about my behavior and my tone, it means that I am doing exactly what I should be doing to represent this country. I've got to say there seem to be, maybe I'm reading into this, a few eye rolls, a few faces that Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor, made here. We do know this has been a relatively rocky relationship at times. Much has been made about the relationship that the two leaders have had in the past, particularly compared to the relationship that Angela Merkel had with former President Obama. They would speak regularly on the phone. Months have gone by with time passing between President Trump and Angela Merkel not speaking as they try to show the world that there is a newfound friendship here. I think a lot of people are still wondering whether that's the case.
Did it feel awkward when the president was hitting the past administrations, especially President Obama, knowing the relationship Merkel had with Obama? Was there any type of facial expression she gave there?
Look, I'm sitting right here in the front row, and I'm with my colleagues from other networks, and we were sort of snickering, if you will, at some of the facial expressions she seemed to be making when we were looking at her. The president made a joke, as he likes to do in jest, I think, about how difficult it is to fire people, and easy it is to fire people in Germany. It's very difficult to fire people there, and she sort of raised her eyebrows and seemed to make eye contact with a staffer here in the room. Look, part of this is just bad luck. This is a visit that is coming just days after French President Macron left the White House, and there's this budding bromance between those two leaders, and they've got I think a lot of people might say, a completely opposite relationship. Although when she did arrive here today, there was some warmth there. There were double kisses from President Trump to Angela Merkel. He guided her into the White House. They're certainly trying to show for the cameras that there is a warm, or at least a warming relationship between the two of them.
Headlines this morning talking about Russia, that big GOP report that came out. I'm curious about your take on the president's reaction to this. He's saying, of course, that big headline that he likes to say, which is no collusion. But many point out this was led by a flawed GOP committee.
Yeah, and the Democrats certainly wasted no time in pointing that out. And as expected, the president wasted no time in applauding this. This is going to be spun as a big win by Trump insiders, by certainly this administration. They will say as proof, as they have been saying, as you just said, of no collusion, of a witch hunt. This is a heavily redacted partisan document. It would be on either side. And the Democrats are not happy with the way all of this has come down and the conclusions that this document has drawn. They find it very faulty.
Cecilia, I have my last question, I promise, for you, so don't hurt me here. I just love talking to you. since you're my friend down there in D.C. But I see the room there. It's just completely packed. So was it more German press than American press in there, which is unusual?
You know this room, and this is a historic room in here, and it's perhaps one of the bigger ones in the White House. If I were to guess, I would say predominantly German press, but I got to say, when I was coming in here, I was commenting with my producer that it looked like there were actually more people to get in than this room fits. We did fit, but this is a big crowd. I wasn't here for the Macron presser, so I don't have any way to compare, but I got to tell you, this was prime time viewing, and I was lucky I got a front seat. And we miss you down here, my friend.
You know what? I'm going to get back down there soon. And if I know you, you're probably throwing some elbows to make sure you've got room on that front row, right?
You know I got sharp elbows.
All right. Thank you to our Cecilia Vega there in the East Room. Let's get right back to Rick Klein. Rick, as Cecilia brought up, the critics of the president say scare tactics and threats, they don't work when it comes to dealing with North Korea. That's not peacemaking. But supporters point out the sanctions didn't work. The actions of past administrations also had little impact. So should the president get some credit here?
No doubt he deserves at least some degree of credit. Now, I think he's taking maybe more credit than he might be due at this moment. One Republican member of Congress who happens to be running for the Senate in Indiana is already nominated him for the Nobel Peace Prize. I don't think we're there yet. But, I talked to one sometime critic of President Trump, who's a Republican today, who said, for as much as we don't like his personal style in that brash manner and we think he's making a mistake in egging on North Korea, maybe he's onto something. Maybe there is some essential truth to the way he's managed that relationship with North Korea. Maybe the insults worked. Maybe that got him to the table. Maybe this moment wouldn't have happened if not for the president's leadership. So we will see how it develops and what the outcome of an eventual meeting. And if Kim Jong-un, though, puts down and dismantles his nuclear program, if there is peace on the Korean Peninsula, that is undeniably a good thing. And it's undeniable as well that President Trump would have had a major role in that, in fomenting and fostering the relationships that lead to that moment.
As far as what we heard in that joint news conference, we heard Angela Merkel saying that when it comes to the Iran nuclear deal, that it's not sufficient, but it's there, it's working. Obviously, Germany plans to stay in it, knowing the U.S. could get out of this. The president saying they will not have nuclear weapons. You can bank on that with some very strong and tough language there. But there's still some policy difference that were evident there on that stage.
That's right, and I think you saw it play out with the French President Emmanuel Macron earlier in the week, although there's much closer personal relationship, a lot of handshakes that we didn't see today, some pecks on the cheek, some dandruff removal, you name it, with the two presidents earlier in the week. You don't have that with Merkel, but you do have the same policy difference. I do think, though, Kenneth, you're starting to see a bit of a potential middle ground on this, which would be to say the president may not rip up the current agreement, but he may insist on an additional agreement that covers the out years, covers the years after the current agreement expires, talks about how tough it is to keep that, but maybe uses that as a condition of staying in the agreement, is to know that it's a permanent solution in Iran.
On Russia, Rick, the president said he was honored by the GOP House Intelligence Report that says no collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. But you got folks coming out pretty quickly, like former Obama CIA Director John Brennan, calling that report highly partisan, flawed, saying the special counsel's findings will be more comprehensive.
Yeah, well, look, the House Republicans will not get the final word on this, certainly not Devin Nunes, the chairman of that committee, who's come under fire himself for closely coordinating revelations with the White House. This, as Cecilia said, is a partisan document. It will be used in partisan warfare in the coming months, but what Mueller has to say will be orders of magnitude more impactful in terms of understanding the ultimate contours of what kind of cooperation was going on between the Russians and the Trump campaign, if any, as well as anything that stems from that, whether it's obstruction of justice or anything else.
Have it, our expertise from Rick Klein there down in D.C. Thank you, Rick, and our thanks to Cecilia Vega at the White House as well. You've been watching our special coverage of President Trump's joint news conference here on ABC News Live. To find out more on what the president said and more analysis, please go to abcnews.com and our ABC News app. Again, I'm Kenneth Moten for ABC News Live.